Hello, welcome to Garden Chronicles. My name is James David, and in today's video, I will talk about a little bit more about this particular type of ferns known as Staghorn ferns. Basically, they are highly sought after, and in a way, I can say that they are sensitive. It's not a simple, easy kind of ferns, and I'd like to share about my experience and how I care for them in this particular video. So stick back and enjoy the show. Now this particular type of staghorn fern is known as bifurcatum, Platycerium Platycerium bifurcatum. I will put in on the details below. You can see their full name. Here I want to talk a little bit more on how I care for this particular type of ferns. I believe this is more of an Elkhorn fern rather than a staghorn, and I find that this particular one is not a rare type. Basically, this is a very common one that is sold in most nurseries here, and I can say it's one of the cheapest ones that it is available in the market. Roughly you can get a decent size about 20 ringgit or so for this particular staghorn fern. Okay, I would like to give you the tips here, and my tip number one is all staghorn ferns do need bright hot sun. In a way, it need to have light on it so that it would not rot away. The telltale sign of rot will be this. Here it's considered healthy, it's a bit furry here, but if you notice that sometimes this portion here or this portion, if it's too wet, it will turn brown and black, and that is an important thing to note, that it is rotting. So always the bright sunlight somehow helps the plant from not getting rotten. So this is a male shield, and one of the things about it that I will do for my tip number two is not to zealously try to trim off the dry leaves, because you can actually damage the root ball. So I'll just leave it as nature takes it, because I think they are very sort of like symbiotic, the dry and the fresh leaves. Now another thing that you can actually notice, that when it comes to certain staghorn ferns, they do tend to have this more like this furry kind of substance on the leaves. Try not to rub them off. This is very important, because all this is actually part and parcel of the plant. So damaging this can actually be detrimental for the staghorn fern. Also note that some people may have some sensitive issues of sinus problem, or even how do you say that term, may have allergies because of this furry substance, because of spores and all that. So do take note that this particular fern is not for everybody. So if you are a plant lover and you really want to have it, and you are actually having some sinus problems, I would suggest that you keep them outdoors, so that you will not suffer the allergies or the sinus problems. Now I must say that my staghorn fern is actually exposed to bright hot sun and rain, and I find that they are doing fairly well in this kind of condition. I have actually placed them indoors, especially in this kind of setting earlier, and what has happened here is, because it is, though it appears to be bright, but in most cases on a long day it's actually very shaded, and because of that they started to rot, and I find that it doesn't really do well in shaded areas. So in my tip number one is bright sun and exposed to sun and rain. So it can be challenging if you were keeping them indoors. Perhaps a very strong grow light might actually help the plant to have the required lighting that is required. I do not miss them because as they are actually exposed to rain and sun, so therefore I just leave it as this. You can see that this is slightly burnt, I think a bit yellowing, is because of too much of sunlight, but I'm okay with it because how do you say, it let nature take its course, because if it's too light green then it's lacking sunlight. Another thing that I want to make mention here about this particular leaf is that they are very firm and leathery in a way that it should feel very hard and strong. So this is sort of like to weather the storm, in a sense that they can handle strong wind and hot sun and heavy rain, and these are the characteristics of a healthy plant. So if you were to find, or you're planning to purchase one, and you find that a little bit flimsy and it's not strong, it's not firm, I would suggest not to purchase such a plant because it's not healthy. What I have done is, when I actually purchased this particular Staghorn Fern, what has happened in most cases when they are sold, this particular top frond, the shield, is actually planted flat on the surface, and this thing will spray up like a fountain. And what I have done here is that I have actually taken out the whole thing, and I use fern bark on it and mounted it inside a pot, and I find it's a very nice hanger, and I can just place it wherever I like. And what I'm actually using as a medium inside of it is just coconut chips. And initially the original medium that it was used was uh, what moss that sphagnum moss. It just doesn't come to my mind at that moment of time. So in the initial shock, most of the leaves started to dry off and turn yellow, but over time it has established itself and it is looking good. I really don't do much about it because I think because it's exposed to sun and rain, so I don't really have to worry much about watering or sunlight. The other factor about feeding is to use banana peel. Bananas peel skin, you can actually dry it or trim it and just place it in between. I have used to do that, and the plant actually grows beautifully and healthy and was lush. But I also had another problem where squirrels and tree shrew started to dig up and sort of ruin the whole frond and actually kill the plant. So ever since that, I'm very cautious of using banana or any fruit skin, because I have a very strong rodent problem and I don't want to attract these creatures to come to my garden and ruin my garden. So do think about it if you have such creatures like squirrels or tree shrew or anything that comes in and looking for food, and you are having tug of war with them. I suggest not to use banana peel. Even I also use egg shells. You can actually dry them, powder, and use them. Actually, they really love it, but there's a reverse effect where you find that these rodents may come and may destroy your plant. So it's best just to use a chemical fertilizer on them and just leave it as that. Now when it comes to propagation, you will notice that there will be some pups that will be forming around the plant. That this particular one is very beautifully, it's like a crown kind of thing. I can actually carefully remove this and place it with another fern bark or mount it on a slab. This is a fern bark, you can notice it. Let me show it to you shortly, just give me a moment. If you notice, this is actually a fern bug. This particular plant, this Staghorn one, was actually a very small plant, smaller than this, and I've actually mounted it on this, and eventually it has covered itself and grew it. I'm not planning to change it because I find that this has established itself. So this is another one here. I might do something about it later. But let's say if you choose not to do anything and just leave this particular Staghorn, they will eventually become one big round thing and cover the whole plant. So sort of like they just know how to handle it, so they really don't have to have a human intervention to handle it like any other ornament plant. And so this particular one, it is sort of like a wild plant and they just know how to handle it. All you have to do is just make sure that you have enough sunlight, enough rainwater. If you get daily rain, then it's fine. Or at least, and if you are going through a sort of like a season where there is a hot and dry season, then you may have to water it daily. But also do watch out for, in the sense that overwatering can rot these things. So we should have a balance of drying and watering. This kind of a proper balance. So when it comes to propagation, this kind of thing, I just have to carefully remove it. The root ball will be actually a little bit spongy, so you may have to tie it with something solid so that it will not move so much, because sometimes if it's lightly dislodged, the whole thing can fall apart and they can actually ruin the whole plant. Now I'll show you the younger plants that I have done. This is the two Staghorn Fern which I actually saw sold in a shopping mall. It was actually sold about 21 ringgit or 25 ringgit in a small pot, a medium-sized pot as big as this. And the medium that they actually used was actually soil, and I think it's more a potting garden soil, and the plant was actually dying. Sad to say, it was dying in such a state that they were selling it for 70% discount. So I got it for about 7 ringgit. 7 ringgit per plant. And what I have done here is I removed and taken away the soil medium from it, and I just used this particular wooden slab, and I put coconut chips inside of it, and I tie it together with facial mask. And I find facial mask is quite breathable. It is sort of like the water doesn't stay too long in it. It dries off fast, and sort of like, and even this sort of like a rubber thing that comes along with the facial mask actually help a lot. This is about 3 months, I can say, three to 6 months if I'm not wrong, and the plant is sort of surviving. You must understand that when the plant goes through a shock, they will not grow, but you know that if as long as nothing's turning yellow, and it's sort of like still alive, so it's a good chance that it is actually doing well. So so these are the things that you have to keep an eye on when it comes to Staghorn Fern. I just want to show you something. Now if you can look over here, this is the sort of like the crown. I have not really buried the thing. It's just like on the surface, so sort of like it's condensed and all that. So I'm actually waiting for the male shield frond to take over, because eventually it will start to cover and may take over this whole thing. So I'm thinking whether once it has established itself, I don't really have to worry so much. So it is sort of like fast draining, and it's also moist. So even you can see the wood is a little bit wet kind of thing. So these are the things that is actually happening for this Staghorn Fern. Similarly, like this is also the same thing, but this one appears to have, earlier there was 2 leaves, then eventually that one particular leaf, this particular one dropped. Sorry, 3 leaves. This is a new one. So So this is the third new one that I've actually established itself. It's quite firm and strong. You can't see it. Hold on. So you can actually see that this is actually the whole plant. The root ball may appear a little bit brownish black, so you can't really notice the structure of the thing. And though it is about few months old, it will take a very long time for a Staghorn Fern to establish itself. So I'm just keeping my fingers crossed. I know the plant is not dead, but however it will take a very long time for it to establish itself. So one of the things that I can explain to you here is, as to establish a Staghorn Fern, is to always try to purchase a small plant and introduce that into your garden space and let it acclimatize to your garden space and let it season itself, and so therefore it will not go through stress or will drop off all its leaves or turn yellow, because it is sudden change for a fern to go through a sort of like a shock, where from a nice healthy humid place, where if at all in a garden center was, or a farm where it was taken care of properly, and suddenly you bring it to another new environment where it may not receive as much as light as possible, or not enough water, or the right ideal condition, and the plant may go through stress. And in most cases, when it comes to this kind of particular type of ferns, they may drop off all the leaves, and sort of like the leaves may rot and fall off and may start again, all the way again with new fronds and new leaves, which may, if I'm not wrong, take about 6 months or so. So that's a very long time to really know whether the ferns is actually alive. And in case that you want to keep something which is so shattered and haggard in your collection, it's going to be an eyesore. So always try to purchase a small plant and let it grow, and that will actually establish itself, and the plant can be said that it's happy. I think I basically covered most of the things. So sunlight, watering, and propagation material or plant material. Also when it comes to feeding. Now when it comes to pests, you may find ants or some insects will be sort of like making a house in them because of the nest condition, especially ants. So you may have to keep an eye on it, because it can be a nuisance if you were to bring in mealybugs or scale insects on the plants. It can happen if the plant is not healthy, sort of like these ants are farming on them. So these are the issues that you have to look into. Another factor that I always get is that some people may think of growing them indoors. You can do so, but with the right conditions, and may require a different setting of system for them to grow when they are grown indoors, especially growing them using grow lights, and also a certain specific kind of fertilizer for them, which you may have to use that specifically and exclusively for them, as they do not receive much rain, water, and sunlight. So it's a little bit of a science here, which you may have to also identify that certain other species can be very difficult to grow in comparison to this particular hardy one, especially when it comes to Ridley eye and some other highly sought after Staghorn ferns can be super sensitive and may not be in good hands when it comes to beginners. Now there's one more tip that I would like to give, is that before you want to cultivate a Staghorn fern, you can actually try to grow this particular fern, bird nest fern, and see whether this particular fern can actually handle and grow in that condition. And if you find that if this particular one does well in that place, most likely the Staghorn fern can grow. However, if this particular one doesn't grow and dies, then in most cases a Staghorn Fern will not survive. So in a way, you can actually trial and error with this particular fern first before cultivating a Staghorn Fern. I have now come to the end of my video. If you have any questions, put them in a comment below and I'll try my best as possible to answer them based on my experience on cultivating this Staghorn Fern. If you can, please do click like and subscribe and support my channel, and I would really appreciate if you could do so, and I would like to hear from you on your contacts and experiences on how you care for your Staghorn Fern. This is the additional information that I want to mention concerning Elkhorn Fern. Here's exactly where I actually place them, where they do receive full bright sun throughout the whole day. I must mention to you that my garden space is very much in high humidity, where through experience that I've actually killed 3 of these due to overwatering factor. Hence I realized that when placing them in open sun such as this, these ferns appears to do much more better in such conditions. One of the factors that I want to mention is that it always due to the factor of your garden condition. I have seen these ferns grow in full shaded areas and they are actually doing fine. So in a way, it is always in the context of case by case basis. Now the current condition here is that it's actually raining daily, so a bright good sunlight actually helps a lot. But if a case where if it does not receive rain and it's already hot and dry weather, then daily watering will actually help. So it is always striking a right balance between these two of sun and rain, or watering and bright light, for it to achieve ideal dynamics for these ferns to thrive. Another factor that I've noticed that it always works best when I look at it, something like the bulging effect of the root ball, that I always keep an eye to make sure that there is no sign of rot taking place, because that's where the whole water body is stored, and hence sometimes I just lift it up and feel the essence of the weight, that if it's very light then it's requiring watering, or if it's very heavy then I will refrain from watering. Here you can notice a small pump is actually forming at the base of the draining hole here. So in a way, I've also noticed that once the plant is happy and thriving, it will put out a lot of pups around surrounding the mother plant. I just want to add a little bit of this a small video here just to show you where I place all these ferns and how I care for them.